seat, we'll get started with the program. Good evening again. Thanks so much. We hope you enjoyed the networking and the opportunity to meet some of your colleagues. Thank you. Thank you. Love that. I'm Steve Reed, the chair for the International Business Society, and with JD Consulting, Director of Community Affairs for them. We really appreciate you being here tonight. This is our, I believe, 8th event since our beginnings back in last year, so we're really pleased to have you here this evening. I think we've got a great program. Delighted that you're here. Our TAG members, our international guests, and also the Nobel Systems folks. We really appreciate them. They put a lot of work into pulling together what we think will be a really interesting program. I'd also like to just quickly recognize all of the International Business Society board members. If you could just stand, I know many of you are in the audience, if you could just stand, if you could everybody take a look. We've got quite a few on the sides here. They put a tremendous amount of work into this society, and so I want to recognize them. So thank you very much. You know, I get a lot of people ask me, how can we get more involved in the International Business Society? One of the best ways you can with your company is to look at a sponsorship opportunity with us. So there's a number of reasons why I think it's one of the more compelling aspects of the International Business Society. One is, of course, you have access to the 12,000 members within TAG, and we promote you as a society within the International Business Society within TAG. But also there's the international community that we also push our messaging out to and try to attract to come to these meetings and be a part of this. And you'll hear about some of those people that are in the audience that Mark Pearson will recognize in a moment. But it's a tremendous opportunity. We have a unique database for the international community that we've built. You have the TAG membership that I mentioned to you. We've got a system where we send out the invitations. If you're a sponsor, you can provide your invitee list, and we will actually work with you to get the invites out to your people that you'd like to have here. And of course, you're going to hear more about the sponsor for this evening in just a moment, but the event system. So we really believe in promoting the sponsors. So if you are interested, you'll be able to talk to the gentleman that I'm going to bring up in a moment to talk about that. And with that, I'd like to again thank you. This is the last you'll see of me this evening, and I'm going to bring up Carl Johnson, who is a partner with the law firm of SFP Fisher Royals, and he's got a few words more about the sponsorship. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'd like to take just a minute to recognize this year's gold sponsor. We especially appreciate the support of Nobel Systems. Before I tell you a little bit about them, I have the names of a couple of individuals with Aventus, and I'm not sure if they're here. So, the Aventus, I see two hands back there. I have the names Leslie Rogers
Thanks, Joe. I want to talk about our upcoming programs this year. We have 4 more great programs. We'll have Big Enterprises in a Small World, Essentials for Success in China, Be Prepared for These Changes, and the Global Leadership Camp. I want to introduce now a few of our international guests who are here in the audience this evening. First, I'd like to introduce the President of the Australian American Chamber of Commerce, Doug Lyon. And Doug had the good taste to marry a lady from Kentucky who obviously has Kentucky in their poll, as do I. So how many people had Kentucky in the Final Four in their poll? Good. I hope you guys win lots of money. And if anybody has 2 tickets to the Final Four, please see me out. Next, I'd like to introduce the President of the Argentine American Chamber of Commerce, Dennis Bruce. The President of the American Israel Chamber of Commerce, Tom Glazer, who's right back there. And the head of the Atlanta Chamber's Global Commerce Council, Mr. Jorge Fernandez. And with the North England Economic Development Agency, Ian Stewart. So I think we have a great program tonight, and our moderator did a great job of putting this together, and he's also on my committee, where I'm very proud of that. And Kirby Winters is the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Solar Velocity. It's a full-service digital marketing agency based in Atlanta, Georgia. Provides digital communication strategy and execution for leading brands such as Lowe's Cars, Hitachi, Power Tools, and LegalZoom. Kirby's also a car racer, so if you want to talk to him afterwards about his car racing ability, he can tell you all about that. But again, he's done a great job putting this panel together, and so would you please welcome Mr. Kirby Winters.
Good evening, everyone. Give me a moment to get us set up here. All right. Thank you all for coming this evening. Too loud? Okay, excellent. We're very fortunate to have wonderful panelists this evening from Nobel Systems to do a deep dive into their organization with a company that began here in North America and now has operations in over 30 different countries. We're going to be taking on some topics ranging from international expansion strategies to global marketing and some currency and risk management and financial areas. I'd like to do a brief introduction and history about Nobel Systems. Nobel Systems is a global provider of unified contact center solutions. Founded by a call center veteran more than 20 years ago, the company has pioneered contact center innovation and customization. Now, we'll dive into Is that better? Yeah. I thought it was a little loud. Okay. Good. Is that good? Everybody hear me? I hear you. Right next to me. There we go. A pioneer in the industry, founder James K. Noble Jr. utilized early predictive dialogue software in the operation of his own call center almost 30 years ago. Realizing the benefits of automating the calling process, Mr. Noble began to focus on ways to improve the technology. 1985, his effort rewarded the design and development of a superior predictive dialer, and the Noble solution was born. Recognizing the need for advanced call automation among his colleagues, Mr. Noble began selling the system to others in his industry. By 1989, more than 20 systems had been installed, and Nobel Systems Corporation was officially formed to further the distribution and support of the Nobel suite. Over the next 2 decades, Nobel Systems grew from a niche technology provider to a true global competitor. Today, Nobel Systems is consistently ranked by industry analysts as one of the top 3 largest providers of outbound dialing services in North America, and is recognized as a global leader in unified communication solutions. Obviously, a very well-rounded technology as international expansion is a part of organic growth, strategic acquisitions, and partnerships, as well as an aggressive approach to emerging markets. Now I'd like to take a moment and give some brief introduction of our distinguished panelists today. We've been very fortunate to have 3 people from their executive team, and I'm really looking forward to them sharing their wisdom and experience with us tonight. To my left, Chris Hodges is the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Nobel Systems, as well as Head of International Development. Chris has nearly 30 years of experience in contact center and technology space. He has extensive experience in both operations and marketing, serving as CEO of the 1,000-seat call center service bureau, and managing more than $500 million in technology sales. Mr. Hodges co-founded National Service Direct, Incorporated in 1999, creating one of the U.S. first fully integrated multimedia customer contact centers. He is considered a specialist on contact center operations, direct marketing, and business development, and has speak events around the world. To his left is Lee Allen, Vice President of Marketing. He leads the global marketing team at Nobel Systems. With more than 10 years of experience in the contact center industry and over 15 years of marketing, his marketing strategies have helped the company achieve 20% compound annual growth rate over the past 3 years. And we all know how tough the past 3 years have been. With a focus on brand development and lead generation, Lee combines business intelligence, web, e-marketing, events, opportunity response, campaign management, and public relations to transform ideas into business results. Lee's experience includes work in TV news, financial services, business process outsourcing, and software development. He's been recognized with an Associated Press Award and various industry awards and contributes to technology and business magazines, blogs, and associations. Mr. Lee is an alumni of Middlesex University in London, England. And to my far left is Craig Isaacs. He serves as Executive Vice President of Finance at Nobel Systems. Prior to joining Nobel Systems in 2009, Craig was CFO of Comvest Inc., a value-added reseller in the networking telephony market, and corporate controller at Data to Logistics, a leading provider of technology solutions to the global logistics and supply chain industry. And we definitely love logistics here, don't we? Craig has gained extensive international experience in a career that began in Johannesburg, South Africa. It includes 5 years in the London, UK, and Atlanta offices of KPMG, where he's worked in both audit and transaction services, advising clients on a wide range of accounting, audit, and due diligence, and other transactional-related activities. Craig holds a master's degree in accounting from the University of South Africa as a member of the South African Board of Chartered Accountants. So welcome to all 3 of them. I'd now like to turn over the podium to Chris to give us a little bit of a deeper look into Nobel Systems. They have a brief presentation for us.
Good evening, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. I've got a 75-slide slideshow here, and I'll read to you slowly, so we'll burn up the rest of the hour with that. Now, seriously, to talk about Nobel Systems World Adventure, I think it's probably good to get some framework around who we are, a little bit of the timeline, how we got here. Just a couple slides to step you through some of those pieces. And Kirby mentioned that we're a provider of call center technology for companies around the world. We'll put a slide up here with some of our customers on that so you get a better idea of the kinds of things we do. We're call center folks. We came out of the call center business, and most of you probably pass our offices every day to and from work on 285 at Ashford Dunwoody, so we didn't have to go too far to get here, although it did take you a long time. 5 o'clock. Got that pesky policeman there, over there on Ashford Dunwoody Road. Evolution of our company, going back into the mid-'80s when we first developed the product. I've been involved with the company since 1991. I know I was only 3 or 4 at the time I took the job, but again, that was 20 years ago. It's a pretty exciting place to be these days. Quick timeline here. We sold part of the company to a large multinational firm in 1999. That was one of the genesis of us moving internationally. We'll talk a little more about that here in a minute. We then bought back the shares of the company a few years ago so that we retained ownership of the business. But we also have done some acquisitions, both domestically and internationally. and have been involved in that kind of growth expansion around the world as well. We'll talk a little bit about that. We have over 4,000 customers around planet Earth right now, covering an awful lot of geography: Madagascar, Mauritius Islands, all across Europe, Africa, Asia, Latin America, the United States, Canada, and we even have call centers in Columbus, Ohio. So just to balance it out. We have offices in 9 countries, and our customers represent about 6 continents right now. We're looking for Antarctica. If anybody wants to open up a call center down there, we'll be happy to make you a sweetheart deal. Here's some of our customers, some big brands you may be familiar with, some international brands. Part of our value proposition is because we work largely direct with customers, we can support multinational firms that may have headquarters in the U.S. or Europe or Australia and support their global operations with direct sales and support around the earth. But all kinds of telecom, financial services companies, consumer marketing companies, and these are technology either to handle customer care. A company like Frontier Communications, when you call your toll-free number when you have a problem with your phone service, when you're one of 7 million subscribers, you're calling into our technology. If you rent a car from Hertz and you don't turn it in on time, they use our technology to reach you. If you owe money to Yellow Book, they call you to collect money using our technology. So those are the kinds of things companies do with our technology. We got global, became global through really 4 different ways, and we'll talk about this a little bit more through the questions and answer section. But through greenfield opportunity, customers pushing us there, acquisitions, and through partnerships. And Kirby's already introduced our panelists, so I'll go back to my chair here and answer questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. All right. We're going to spend the rest of the time just going through some brief questions and answers. And at the end, we'll actually have some time for the audience to participate and ask some questions as well. So be thinking of some interesting things, and I hope that we'll have some very good, interesting questions. I'm just going to go through and begin asking some questions. And so, Chris, I guess you kind of touched on it for me briefly right there. It seems obvious to a lot of people why you want to go internationally, but can you kind of tell me what was the genesis and what really brought you to want to expand globally?
Sure. First of all, we were driven there by our customers. One of the big trends in the 90s was this thing called delocalization, which became known as offshoring. GE and American Express and some other big companies began putting back office business processes in places like India and the Philippines and so forth. And a lot of companies in North America were looking to put their contact centers abroad as well to reduce costs. And so we initially got into places like India, the Philippines, Dominican Republic, Latin America, because our customers here wanted to put call centers there to reduce their costs. So that was really the initial genesis of it. Then we sold an equity stake, as I said, to a global company. The headquarters was in Paris, France. Board meetings were great. But they had offices in 40 countries, and they owned subsidiaries in 40 countries. And one of their missions was to utilize Nobel Systems technology throughout as many of their subsidiaries as possible. So we co-located in the same markets with some of their larger subsidiaries. And so that brought us into the UK, brought us into France. It brought us into Argentina and Brazil and places like that initially. We subsequently bought back those equity shares, as I said earlier. We also made acquisitions that had big footprint in other countries. Australia, the UK, currently working on some acquisitions in Asia to help bring us into those markets as well. So we're buying an existing customer base for competitive products where there were typically competitors in that area with us, buying those companies and bringing them into our organization as well. And then internally, we needed to move some costs offshore as well. So we have contact centers in India, in the Philippines, and other places, because we do follow-the-sun support for our customers, and that way we're able to cover 24/7, 365 support, and taking advantage of lower costs in some of those other markets for customer service representatives and that kind of thing. And then lastly, we have business partners in places like South Africa, Mexico, India, the Philippines, and other places where it doesn't make any sense for us to have commercial offices or direct sales and that kind of thing. So we've established business partnerships, channel partners, if you will, and reseller models in those countries.
Wow, so a wide array of reasons, not just because you got a customer there and you decided to open up operations, but your customers kind of pulled you into these other markets, and then on top of that, it kind of developed into cost savings and then outsourcing and acquisition. So
20 years is a long time, so you get to do a lot of different things over 2 decades.
no, fascinating. Well, Lee, we've heard, and there's a lot of different ways, obviously, that you went into other markets. That there's a lot of challenges in the marketing arena. We've heard, a lot of, public missteps. At least I haven't, somewhat in marketing, but a lot of public missteps of companies going into other markets and not really understanding the language well or understanding the vernacular. One that always makes me laugh is that IKEA was bringing over into the U.S. some new desks, and they called it the fartful. And I don't think that's something that we would really appreciate over here. So they did change the name of that one. Do you have any stories or any kind of words of wisdom of how you've gone into other markets and you really kind of dive into what's the best way to approach that when going into a new market?
Yeah, sure. Well, obviously, a lot of those stories are out there, and we obviously watch that. We try to avoid many of those instances. And keep in mind, my boss is sitting next to me, so I'm not going to happen to us. But when it comes down to language, that's a big issue. We pretty much enact a hub and spoke approach to the way we do our marketing. We do have a corporate office here in Atlanta. We have our marketing people spread out across our offices around the world, and we have a bi-directional communication. So we utilise our international people. So when we do translations on language, it goes both ways. Both offices see it. It's local and it's corporate to make sure it's relevant, accurate, and interesting. So we avoid the language things like that. I think something that becomes more interesting for us is the cultural things. We face things like religion, especially in we deal with America. In the UK, for example, in Australia, we will around the world, we say Merry Christmas or something like that for a holiday. But in America, of course, we can't. And so we say Happy Holidays, and the UK office says, "Oh, what are you doing? This is awful." I will tell you one thing that came up that was a bit of a red face at the moment. It's when we were doing a press release for the German market. And it was a rush market kind of situation, trying to get fresh release out, a lot of pressure on us, and so we took some shortcuts. We avoided our own best practice, and we utilised the services of a PR wife at the time. And what we're told went out was not anything I really wanted to say. I found out essentially they were using an online translation device, and that cuts across. For a moment I was delighted because the cost was quite low, the money was really far off. So that was one of the things we did fall into, and of course we quickly made things avoided that moment. But
Are you going to tell us the racy thing that it actually translated into?
I can't. There could be some underage people here. Other things too. You face like imagery doesn't translate well to some other cultures. In America, we actually show the audience with nice, pretty, white teeth. Doesn't translate well into some other cultures. Like, that's not how people do it. Other things, email frequency. In America, quite happy to do lots of email. We do a lot of e-marketing. Doesn't do well in other cultures, so we had to tone it down a bit. Other things too, like, again, I'm sort of concentrating to America, but we tend to do a lot of the market in America. Things like when we claim we're number one, we're the best. We even have some history where we put our CEO on the front, puffed up. It works great in America, and also we do it abroad. So we change what we say, we change our imageries, and we work very well with offices to make sure we do the sensitivities.
So when you're going into those other markets, are you seeking out partners in those markets, other marketing firms, or do you actually hire people and put them in place in the other markets?
We do utilise both. We do have a couple of people across the world who manage marketing in other countries, but we mostly do a lot in corporate offices in America, and but we do use our partners.
Great. So Craig, now question for you. International trade is obviously very complex complexity in how to manage that trade across the different markets. How has your philosophy changed as you've gone from, or maybe you've seen the company go from 4, 5, 10, 20, now 30 plus countries that you're doing trade with?
Yeah, well, so. There you go. Well, of course, everybody knows.
Maybe it's just you, Craig.
This one's on. There you go. Just speak up.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously everybody knows that we live in with very volatile currency markets. Even minor changes in exchange rates can have fairly significant impacts on a company's bottom line, on the business as a whole. We at Nobel Systems are obviously, as most people are, fairly risk averse and try and avoid any associated currency risk whenever possible. We do this in a number of different ways, and probably the most successful way that we do this is by contracting locally wherever possible with our customers. So we obviously have operations in many different countries, and we're fairly lucky. We're fairly lucky that a fair amount of our business comes from the relatively stable economies of the UK and Australia. But in order to minimize exchange rate risk, when we contract with local currencies, obviously at the local entity level, we take that any exchange rate risk off the table immediately, and that's huge. Where we do have to contract across borders, we generally write those contracts in the currency of the contracting entity. So, for example, in the US, if we sell in Canada, Mexico, or Argentina, we write those contracts in US dollars, effectively transferring exchange rate risk to our customers. And we've been successful at that in basically eliminating all the risk. One of the places where it's a little more difficult to control is in the repatriation of funds from those foreign entities. And a lot of thought and planning goes into that. We try to keep as little cash on hand in local entities as possible. Try and leave them with enough money, obviously, for working capital needs, but not too much that we're exposed to any huge variations in currency markets. And we'll use all kinds of creative ways to repatriate funds, through dividends, through loan repayments, through management fees, and things like that.
But GAAP acceptable.
In case there are any accounts or IRS agents.
There you go.
And more important. Thank you, Greg. That's fascinating. I'm sure there's a lot more detail to that, but it certainly is a good overview, because I assume, obviously, that you are, as you're going into the other markets, you're establishing the financial relationship for the other group that's within the other country, meaning with some sort of bank, and then you manage all of your different flows through that, of course. But it's very interesting, because I'm sure there are ways to keep funds abroad or keep funds local here in the United States. And it sounds like your philosophy is a lot about keeping them here. So
Yeah, it's a general philosophy about it. As many things as we can, I'll say we manage and control. And that's what for us.
excellent. Back to you, Chris. So Nobel Systems now is doing business in over 30 countries. And obviously each country has its own set of challenges. Over the years, have you found any common set of challenges as you're entering a new market that you can maybe look back over and say, these all are similar and more often than not?
Sure. And just for the room, put some scope, we're 350 employees, and 35% or so of our revenue this quarter is international. So that's kind of give you some scope of how big we are and what our size is. So we're a relatively small company. And in any case, I'm going to break it down for you, Kirby, in kind of 3 buckets: sales and marketing, products, because we sell products, and kind of the corporate side. I'm involved in all 3 of those. Start with what's practices to the local market. United Kingdom's a relatively small place, so folks are used to a lot of face-to-face meetings here. So getting in a car, driving 5 hours, down the M1 or something is not a big deal for them. We engine mode if we drive 20 minutes and got off the traffic around 285. And we're pretty common getting in an airplane here, putting 3 or 4 people in a jet and flying across the country to have 3-hour meetings. Not that uncommon here. There's also a lot of places where webinars, surprisingly enough, aren't that popular. We've done webinars with huge success in the U.S. We get 100 people to a webinar with very little notice. In Australia, we've tried it, and we get like 2 people. So I'm getting a question. It's difficult to pull those kind of things off. We do a lot of meetings in the UK that are like breakfast meetings. And the first time I went to one of those, and they're serving baked beans and stewed tomatoes or something at 7 a.m. You've got a room full of people, and they're eating breakfast and they're talking. So you hear we'll go to a lunch and learn or an evening and you drinking cocktails and have some guy talk for a minute on stage. So those kind of things are cultural differences we have to adapt to. Pricing and positioning. We sell software and provide services and sell some hardware too. It's part of our solution. We look at everything as kind of being a percentage of what U.S. list is. And so we might go into a country and say, by analyzing the market and competition and price points, and we hire professionals from the industry typically, and we'll say like the UK is 1.3 times what the U.S. rate would be, but India might be 0.6, or Brazil might be 0.8, and South Africa might be 0.85, and so forth. And so that's how we establish the pricing. And then, of course, we have to factor in whether or not we're selling direct or indirect or that kind of thing into that pricing model. And you have to be flexible. What the expectation is. There are a lot of markets where they commoditize technology. Places like India, for instance, even Apple and Microsoft and those kind of folks will tell you it's just cheaper. You sell the product cheaper there, because it's more of a commodity. Where there's more value add in a place like the UK or Australia, something like that. On the product side, localization, that was probably our first big lesson, our first version of our product that we rolled out internationally, only accounted for like a 5-digit zip code. Big problem. One of the first hurdles to go over, time zones. We manage 20 some odd time zones in our system, global, and you have to know where somebody is when you're calling them, or so you can track exactly what the local laws are. So there's a lot of complexity around that on the productization side. Date formats, here in the U.S. we're somewhat arrogant, believe everyone is, today is 3:30, and that's fine if it's not after the 12th of the month. If it's after the 12th of the month, everyone knows what date format you're using. If it's before that, is it February 3rd, is it March 2nd, I don't know. So we had to work out those issues to make that happen. Let's go to talk about the corporate side for a minute. One of the first things that impacted me when I took over my international role half a dozen years ago was the time zone thing. Having a meeting with someone in Europe early in the morning, but then you have to stay up late to have a conversation with someone in Asia. And there are BPO countries like India and the Philippines where they're actually operating on our time. So all the call centers in the Philippines that are supporting the U.S., their offices are all open now, our daylight. Whereas in Australia, of course, they're 15 hours ahead. Saturday will be 16 hours ahead. So you've got to factor all that stuff out and just have fun with a conference call that involves Europe and Asia, and someone's going to suffer. We usually make it Australia, sorry. It's usually Australia, there's only a few people there, drink a beer, we'll be fine. Probably another big one for us is the labor laws. And here in the U.S., it's hire, fire, will. Sorry, Lee, it didn't work out. I didn't know about that PR gaffe. You're out of here. You've got to put folks in a process, in Europe and really just about everywhere. Maybe Latin America is a little bit different. You have to put them in a process that can take 90 days of performance issue. Acquiring companies, there's a process in the UK called TUBI. Reporting into different companies, you have to let everybody know who's at risk. There's a big, long, drawn-out process. You have to factor that into the acquisition to make sure you're covering off, that extra. You can't just go in Oklahoma and lay off everybody and decide, you're good, you're not. You have to go through, Brazilian citizen with an active passport that has a residence there, that can prove it to be your general manager, to run that kind of thing. And so that makes those things more complicated. And then you have to find, the accountants and the lawyers and all that. And one of your sponsors, AJW, is actually our accounting firm, has nexus oftentimes in places like that. They can help, but those are some of I think the key challenges that we look at in the new market.
So it sounds like it doesn't necessarily get easier each country that you go into. That you have to approach all those challenges, but maybe over time you know what to look for.
Labor's your most expensive thing, so I understand there's like a zone here. Labor's the most expensive thing, so you've got to look at that first. What those impacts are going to be. We do a lot of pre-planning. We're looking at an acquisition right now. Craig and I spent most of the week last week in a boardroom going over org charts and try to figure out, based on tenure, where they're located, and is it cheaper to be in this state, and that kind of thing, and do that kind of planning. The product stuff at this point for us, to be able to support customers in 30 countries, you're pretty much there anyway. But it is a process. It's a check the box list of things to do.
So the technology's gotten a little better of having the products, but now you still have all those administrative things you just have to do.
Language change is easy, but you have to know, are the folks really able to deal with English documentation? Because there's only a subset of your document. You're a small company, you can't have 100% of your documentation in 5 languages or 8 languages. So you pick what it has to be, And a lot of countries, even places like China, U.S. Documentation for the IT manuals is no problem, but the folks that are the end user, the supervisor or something needs to have their bit in Mandarin. That's what we have Lee for to translate that stuff.
Well, that's a good segue into Lee. Lee, I have a question about the brand management. And it's certainly, I'm sure, a challenge to some extent to manage a brand across 30 different countries. You see a lot of brands like Coca-Cola. They have a common set of colors. Their logo pretty much stays the same unless you change the words in India or somewhere else. But for the most part, they have that icon is very important to maintain. As you've progressed across all these different countries, how have you been that good steward of the brand? And then what kind of things have you allowed to kind of morph around the culture?
Yeah, well, as you can imagine, marketing brand is everything for us. We spend a considerable amount of time and resources and money to make sure that the brand is well represented in any market that we're in. We spend a lot of time at trade shows, doing websites, doing events, any type of e-marketing, pushing out our colours, our logo, our messaging. So what we found very good is to establish what those are and just keep pushing it. Some of those things, as you can imagine, are things like a customer-centric organisation, the choice of the software choice of large firms. We're a pioneer. We're a company of innovators. But there are some cases where we've found that when we go to another market, that it's beneficial for us to maintain another brand. So like the UK, we had a divider brand, Landcat. At that time, it was the largest install base in the UK. And it was advantageous for us to actually keep the Landcat brand for us. And over time, slowly phase in the Nobel. Ultimately, we want to get to a Nobel brand. That's what we're here to do in my group. So we have a schedule which we phase things out. It exists in the US as well prior to that, but I didn't have a brand, so we were able to phase it out fairly quick. It's education. It's education of the customers and prospects and the market as a whole. That's how we manage it.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, that's very fascinating. As you're acquiring a company, then you're trying to morph it into your brand. And I'm sure that's probably one of the most time-consuming pieces. You don't want to lose what the brand they already had, but it needs to become your own.
Yeah, there's a value in the brand that they've established, and so obviously we don't want to lose that. We want to take that and news access on Hawaii was to leverage our into telling them about the motorway and establishing that. In some of these markets that perhaps we're taking over, it's slightly something different and novel. They might get a high value thing versus what we represent. Again, there's a system of education that to go through for that.
Yeah, the hardest part is getting the customers to stop calling you the old brand name. Yeah. So you're in every meeting, they're calling you this, or you know where that. You know, so that's the hard part.
Another piece of education there for the customers too. And going into the value proposition, Craig, when you're building out operations in another country, how do you manage that investment dollars really required to provide operations? How do you approach that?
Well, I think, as Chris mentioned, really planning is the key, and we're probably obsessive about planning. Our CEO doesn't like surprises, and we put a lot of time and effort into any new venture, but certainly something as significant as opening a new market. And it becomes a very collaborative process for us. A lot of people involved, make sure we all ask all the right questions. We don't always have all the right answers the first time, but we try and ask the right questions. And depending on the result we're getting into the market, whether it's customer driven, we should obviously, and that's where to get in because we've got into the business and into the revenue to help fund our operations there. But if it's a greenfield opportunity, we obviously we create a very detailed plan, very detailed budget, and manage to do that as best we can. Our goal with opening new offices is obviously get them self-funding as quickly as possible. And we'll run it very lean in the beginning. And because we do so much centrally, we do a lot of production, a lot of development, a lot of marketing centrally. No reason to add those costs and duplicate those costs in new ventures. That enables us to run those businesses very lean until they stand on their feet and self-fund their operations. And at that point, if they need additional resources, they can afford to hire. And as they get up to that point, we'll leverage U.S. resources, U.S., Australia, wherever, we'll send technicians, we'll send development people, whatever it is, whatever we need, we can do that. And we're able to do that because one of the other things I think we've done very successfully is develop a very standard set of practices and procedures across the organization. When we do something as simple as hiring somebody, it's the same procedure whether you're hiring them in India, whether you're hiring them in Brazil, or you're hiring them in the U.S. And same approvals are required, and the same, just everything is the same. And so that enables us to parachute people in and hit the ground running, and everything's the same to them.
Do you feel that's always been obvious, or is that something that you've learned over time, some hard lessons that, oh gosh, we have to standardize this?
I think you learn the hard way. It's expensive if you don't do it that way. And you'll learn.
There's not enough smart people that know everything that you can send everywhere. Just not. That's the way it is. We call that critical mass when he's talking about when a sub hits critical mass, where they're actually, able to take on their own, decisions relative to that kind of thing with self-funding. It's like, it's your budget, rock and roll,
Very good critical mass, I like that. So, Chris, outside the U.S., where do you see the potential growth of Nobel Systems in the next 10 years, and why?
For us, it's pretty simple. Latin America, Caribbean, Central America, South America, Mexico, and Brazil are huge growth markets in the contact center space. Brazilian economy is still cruising right now. It's a very hot economy, a lot of opportunity down there, so we're very excited about that. We formed some new partnerships. We're in Bolivia, Colombia, Guatemala, Honduras, Central America. We've got an office in Mexico City, one in Sao Paulo, one in Medellin, Colombia. So we see Latin America is real hot for us right now. And then Asia, huge opportunities in Asia. I'm trying to figure out, I need to come to your seminar that he mentioned earlier and figure out what we're going to do in China. I think the end game is probably, at some point, China. Right now we're
to grow like it has. And Lisa, another question for you. So how do you scale your marketing investments when your company footprint covers 30 countries? That's a big thing to manage.
Yeah, for a company our size, it's very important that we find efficiencies where we can. So we'll typically lean on a lot of our partners, a lot of associations that may be in the country, like an association might be here in the US and may actually use those guys to get into the marketing aspects of a local market. And we also may use our own customers to help us find our way to, where should we be? Where should we be placing an event? What should we be saying? What are the pain points that we should be addressing in our marketing message? So we really reach a lot of people that we can around the world. We conduct a lot of events around the place. We do a lot of webinars, as Chris mentioned earlier. Do a lot of e-marketing. To do that, we have a lot of good people around the world to talk to. Is that we use resources from one place. That could be, say, in Australia. It could be a technical person in Australia. We're going to have a host that could be out of the UK. And we'll obviously work out time zones, which is pleasant for everybody. But we'll use people to resources to conduct those some marketing activities. Also, other ways we find efficiency is tools. So we usually talk about tools and processes. So on the tool side, we use things like the ERP system, which we share across all the offices. So customers and prospects, we know who they are in one market. So if we've got someone who can call them client prospects in the UK to check the ERP system, we really have an existing relationship in Australia. And so that helps us a great deal. Otherwise, you go in there cold and uninformed, and that can be so much worse than going in cold. So, systems that we use is we just implemented our own Nobel universities, an online training system. So, by which we are training our own employees about our own product and processes that we use in our system. So, we're transferring across the regional offices, so no one's left out in the cold or said, we never heard of that. So, the online business makes it very easy for us to transfer that knowledge. We also have a process by which we centralise a lot of that knowledge inside a knowledge base. So we're working on a business response in the UK, and we'll know about the products, about how to answer it, go to the knowledge base. It is basically in the cloud, if you will, knowledge. So we use tools like that, and we set up websites, market sites, and stuff like that, again, to really centralise and aggregate all our knowledge where we see efficiencies out there.
Excellent. And I can imagine across so many countries that's extremely important to be able to gain those economies of scale and being able to use those tools. And the cloud is really affording us to do more and more of those things going forward. That kind of leads me into that marketing is obviously a subset of sales and all of the different revenue targets. Craig, what are some of your strategies effectively managing those financial accounting and reporting requirements across the local organization?
Well, as I mentioned, a few years ago we invested in a local ERP system, which has enabled us to effectively operate accounting system, one central accounting system globally. And obviously each country is its own entity within that accounting system. But each country is effectively, except for the currency being used, is pretty much identical. Common job accounts, common accounting rules. We generally push on them to account for things in US GAAP the way we would in the US, which enables us to effectively and very quickly consolidate globally and leverage local relationships with accountants to make sure that those local entities can be compliant with their own global statutory reporting, their own tax returns, etc. One of the things, as I mentioned, is this initiative that we have of common practices and procedures across the business applies to the accounting departments too. And so we're in a position where we can open a business
countries. And I can imagine how difficult it would be to try to manage the business if you weren't able to get that timely reporting.
You have to have up-to-date information all the time, every day.
Well, really I have time for one more question. We'll go a little off of what we talked about before, but as we were discussing and talking before our panel discussion here, Chris, we discussed a little bit about cloud computing and how that's really starting to change your business. Sure. And obviously from our technology perspective, we see how these things are becoming transformative.
Right.
Can you tell me just a little bit about how you see that affecting your business?
Sure. Well, many of our customers deploy our solution in their private cloud now. That's a big part of the way enterprises deploy infrastructure-type technology across their enterprise. We've recently announced our own communication as a service model, hosted model. This is our technology on our own NOC, and we're providing that to end-user customers. Initially in North America, we've begun the process of putting satellite deployments of that in the UK, Brazil, Australia, South Africa, and some other locations as well. So we've been pushing that. There is, especially the SMB model, and on folks that require elastic capacity to their infrastructure and their environment. That is a very sexy solution for them, and it's an on-demand type of a program. And in our world, because there's telephony, there's messaging, there's direct interfaces with the agent screen and legacy systems in the back end and all that. And a lot of people don't realize that inside a contact center, it's one of the few places in a company where every single IT system in a business might have to come together so someone can handle an issue for a customer. And all that, the technology for that, with the voice and everything else, really, until SIP was something that was well established everywhere, was more difficult for us to pull off, but we're providing those kinds of solutions now, right here in Atlanta, actually, for our customers across North America. So it's a big part of our business.
You think it's going to take over going forward, so maybe more and more so?
Well, I think large enterprise, very, very large companies that spend billions of dollars on technology, they still want their control, they want their own security issues, they want to cycle the world behind their firewall. So it won't go away. I think on the lower end, it's pretty much killed that business already. I think the small, medium business, contact center operation, with the advent of folks like Salesforce.com and others, you've got category killers like that in the CRM space that have really driven that to the small business. So it's very uncommon for us in the U.S. to sell a small system to a company that can go host it. In other countries, in the UK or Australia, something that's a small system here is a pretty large system there, so the dynamics change a little bit that way.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for your comments and your questions and answers. And I'd really like to turn it over now. We have a few minutes left for any questions that the audience might have. We have a couple microphones floating over here.
Hi, Mrs. Wood. Two-part question, if I could, probably for Craig. Do your overseas subsidiaries operate as resellers of the product? Are they buying resellers, or are they like commission agents? And the second part is, I know the IRS is very keen on transfer pricing for multinationals. Do you have formal arm's length agreements between yourself and the subsidiaries?
Yeah, and actually it's really one question because we do sell them the product, and that is part of the transfer pricing strategy is how much they pay for that product and how much profit are we making in a local entity versus in the US. We went through this obviously in detail with our accountants and auditors, and we come up with a strategy that enables us to charge for our product, incorporating a management fee that covers the corporate side of what we do, and comply with local as well as for our tax requirements. Thanks.
We have someone up front.
My question is for Craig. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Okay.
You mentioned that you're in South Africa, and as I understand it, in some of the English-speaking African countries, the cost per rep per hour is comparable to in India. So I was wondering if you saw any value in expanding to West African countries, and if so, what are the challenges? What challenges might you feel?
Okay. Well, South Africa, the rand has gotten a lot stronger against the dollar recently. I think it's 7.
Good question.
7-1.
Her question was, is it inexpensive to have higher cost center agents in parts of Africa? Is it competitive with other big BPO destinations?
No, that wasn't.
Okay.
It was, do you plan to expand to West African English-speaking countries because like
Comparable
Ghana
cost, yeah.
or Nigeria because they have comparable costs for agents?
Well, that is a good question. Honestly, we don't have any demand right now in West Africa. We started in Africa with North Africa because that was the offshore for France. And French-speaking Northern Africa, places like Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, has a lot of French. It was French occupation during the war, so there's a lot of native French speakers there. And so that was one of the first places in Africa where outsourcing happened. In South Africa, they're mostly servicing Australia and the UK. There's a time zone, great synergies on time zone with the UK. We've not had any demand. Maybe Nairobi up in Kenya. There's been some English offshoring there. I don't know enough about the geopolitical situation or what the real underlying costs are. I would put it in tiers. I'd say there's really 3 tiers. There's like the US, UK, Western Europe tier in terms of cost for running a contact center. There's like a tier 2, which would be like your Central America, Latin America, South Africa. Then there's a tier 3 cost, like India, Philippines, Indonesia, North Africa. I would just guess that assuming the language support and infrastructure is there, that West Africa would probably be in that tier in terms of the deal. They just probably need to focus on who they're going to market to, because there is a lot of competition for that BPO business process outsourcing in the contact center environment right now.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question. Quickly here. Maybe we got a couple quick questions.
I have a quick question. If this is for Craig, when you establish your budget rate for profits, are you going to, or do you hedge 100% of your risk when you repatriate funds?
Effectively, the answer is yes. Through the budgeting process, we will, obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know what the exchange rate is going to do. But we do plan on, include buffers, etc., in our budgeting process to ensure that we're covered for reasonable volatility, but I think that's the best thing to do.
We load the subs money to get them started, basically. Work off that.
One more question.
Hi, this is probably for Chris. I'm Sonia Diaz-Batts, and I'm the global manager for NTT America. We're the Americas division, International Telecom division for NTT Communications out of Japan. And I saw the map when you flashed it on the screen. I noticed that you've got locations in Japan. I was just wondering, how are you dealing with the current situation in Japan? Is it affecting you, and how?
I got to tell you that I really don't know if it's impacted Nobel Systems directly at all, because our customers are being serviced out of places like the Philippines and Australia. Docomo is a big customer of ours, and they operate 6 or 8 countries with our technology.
Yeah, they're one of our companies.
And yeah, that's their subsidiary. And other than the initial concern about what was going to happen with tsunami and stuff like that in the Philippines and other parts of the world, we've not really been impacted. And if we are, we've not been notified that there's any issue. A lot of our